It did look like the Maryland game from a rushing standpoint in terms of not even seeing anybody on the screen other than a opposing running back. Steve, maybe I put too much on this defensive line. They've got 3 5-star. The entire Big Ten almost doesn't have as many 5-stars in the conference as the Ohio State defensive line does. And I just thought this group could be devastating. They can just roll their helmets out and they're going to be good, but I guess that's not necessarily the case, and maybe it's too much to ask because JTT just stepped on campus a month ago, and even Jack Sawyer's just a freshman.
Yeah, you make a very good point there. You would think that the defensive line would play at a little bit higher level. I mean, Haskell Garrett was a preseason All-American. Zach Harrison supposed to be leave after this season to go to the NFL. Tyreek Smith, a senior, playing to get to the NFL. The other defensive tackle spot's been kind of a revolving door with Antoine Jackson and Teron Vincent and different guys. So, to my way of thinking, the defensive line is kind of where a lot of the problems begin. They're not getting enough accomplished up front with that defensive line. And I think that they're getting no production. In this game, they had 0 sacks and 1 tackle for loss out of 83 plays by Oregon. I mean, that is as pitiful as it gets. Nobody's making a play. They didn't get any turnovers. They didn't make any negative plays. So the defense really accomplishes nothing if it can't do either of those things and just kind of forestalls eventually. If you can't get pressure on the quarterback, he's going to pick you apart. And they made this guy from Oregon, who's just kind of a middle-of-the-road pedestrian guy, although somewhat of a veteran guy with 30 starts now at the college level, they made him look like John Elway. So I don't know. They got some deep-seated issues, and guys aren't playing up to the recruiting ranking that they had, and the scheme, the personnel, too many people that are just seem to me be playing out of position and just aren't getting the production that they need to get out of these guys. They have got to get back to some type of a scheme that the players that they have can execute. And they got to get more production out of the defensive line. They got to find a way, whether it's more stunts, more blitzes, whatever it could be, to get more pressure on the opposing quarterback, better run fits to not allow some of the running plays, and to set the edge. I mean, when Oregon, go back and watch the 3 touchdown runs to the boundary, they have a pulling guard on each play, and he's looking for somebody to hit. There's nobody out there to even hit. That's how bad Ohio State's defense was mismanaged on those plays, that they're taking each other out of the play, and it's just an ugly mess out there. So, but it starts up front. The guys that are getting paid the most money, and I just use that in jest. If it was an NFL team, most of the salary cap on that defense would be up front because those guys had the experience coming in. They're not producing, and I think that's the beginning of the problem.
Yeah, once again, I think you guys are trying to make me say something bad here, and I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to live the golden rule and all of that good stuff, because anybody who knows me knows that I'm Joe rule follower, and I don't like to say bad things. But yeah, the defensive line has been a pretty ugly operation so far. No pass rush. I mean, I understand teams try to speed up against Ohio State, get the ball out of their quarterback's hands, but even on the plays that are taking longer than 1.7 seconds to get out of the quarterback's hands, nobody's close. I mean, maybe against Minnesota, there were some instances where guys were almost getting home. Well, against Oregon, nobody was getting close to getting home. I mean, he could have read a book there. I mean, it was bad. But at this point, do you have any faith with the way that the defense is being called, that if they sat there and send 6, that they're just not going to throw right where the blitzers are coming from? Because Ohio State's defense is wholly way too predictable. People know what's coming, and this isn't a secret. Everybody knows what's coming. And I go back to the old Simpsons episode where Bart and Lisa play rock, scissors, papers, and Bart's like, good old rock. Nothing beats rock. And that's what Ohio State's been doing. And hopefully with some sort of structural change or whatever, maybe they'll throw a paper or scissors in there occasionally, because Rock ain't doing it.
Kevin, next week I'll say real quickly, we're going to do an hour on the wide receivers. So you can just talk good things, and then maybe the next week after that we'll do a review of 2014. So those are our next two shows. So Kevin can talk. Tony.
Yeah, I'll throw in another Simpsons analogy here. When Ned Flanders was a kid and he was out of control and he was just a rambunctious kid, and his beatnik parents took him to a doctor, and they would never discipline him or whatever. And I think it was Ned's mom that said, we've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas. And that's a lot of what the Ohio State defense has been the last year. You look at these last 4 games from last year to this year. It's the last time they've given up 400 yards of total offense each time. The last time they did that in 4 straight games were the last 4 games of Greg Schiano's tenure at Ohio State in 2018. Ryan Day did not keep him around after those 4 games. And the performance at the end was one of those reasons why. And he's got that same performance going on now, except it's even worse. The points are higher. The yardage is higher. So something has to be done. The defensive line, I was rewatching the game the other day, yesterday, I think, and I think they were so concerned about Anthony Brown breaking contain. I saw JT Tuimoloau rushing the passer at one point, and then halfway through, he just stops and backs off while Anthony Brown still has the ball. He rushes and then he plays contain. And then Steve talked about the pulling guards, not even the pulling guards. Just the guys, the guards blocking on those runs to the left. Like there was nobody there for them to block. The guards could have carried the ball in. And when you don't even have somebody there to occupy the blocker, like you have been so out schemed that it's almost a hat tip from Moorhead to say, I'm gonna put a blocker out there. I don't even need one, but I'll do it so it's not disrespectful. I'll make it look like we aren't totally non-confused by what you're throwing out there. So I'll throw a blocker out there, make it look like that you could tackle it, knowing that we don't even need a blocker out there because we've got them so outnumbered and so out leveraged that it doesn't even matter. And as a head coach, Ryan Day is watching this, and he said he's going to be much more involved defensively now, which also annoys him because it takes him away from the offense and the special teams. Urban Meyer had to do this a couple of times in his tenure at Ohio State when he had to get more involved in the defense, and you saw some upticks there. But it's going to be interesting to watch because at this point, these next 3-4 games or whatever, what is success? Now, we could probably spend the rest of the show on that. Like the defense obviously needs to look better, but what does it mean?
Yeah, maybe Don Brown's looking for employment again. David Whalen, Kevin, Steve, Tony, we hear about read and react, and this is basically what Tony gave us a classic example of in regards to leverage hit, yet it appeared more like a strange fest, stooge fest with linebackers out of position and practically no defensive line rush. Any other comments in that vein? But again, Tony kind of outlined that just now.
Kevin?
I mean, we want to sit there and keep the rating of this show as kid-friendly as possible, so I'm going to take a pass.
We do.
But, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I mean, and we've said that. I don't, we can continue to harp on it, but just the leverage is a huge thing. The defense is designed not to give up big plays. And so when it does the exact opposite of that, things are entirely wrong. And the scheme is a good one, but you have to have the players, you have to have the coaching. And remember, like, the reason the scheme is the way it is because Ryan Day doesn't like playing against it. Like, he is an offensive guy. What defense do I hate the most? That's the one I want here. Urban Meyer said the same thing. Like, he hates playing against Michigan State's quarters. So he went and got a quarters defense. That's what these guys do. But you also have to have the guys that can coach it and the guys who can play it. 2014, they brought in Chris Ash, who was a quarters coach, and they weren't good at it initially. I mean, we saw them lose, but they got better at it as the season went on. By the end of the season, they were very good. So there's still time for this defense, but it's clear that under the leadership that they have right now, it's never going to get better, and certainly not good enough to be wherever they want to be.
It only makes sense that when you have superior athletes, that if you're giving up big plays, then you're also making big plays, that you have designed a defense that, okay, you're going to get gashed from time to time, but especially when you get superior athletes, but you're also gashing them and creating turnovers, havoc plays. It just doesn't all add up at all.